Welcome right into the Sheridan Report, brought to you by MyBookie.Ag. If you want up to a $1,000 cashback bonus on your first deposit, go to thegruelytruth.net, click on the MyBookie.Ag banner at the top of the page, and that's what you'll get. You put $2,000 in, you'll have $3,000 to bet with. You put $1,000 in, you'll have $1,500. You know the drill, 50% up to $1,000. I am your co-host for the Sheridan Report, Mike Goodpasser. Right now, I'd like to welcome in Bobby Sheridan. How you doing, Bobby?
Hey, I'm doing good, Mike, and got daytime baseball rolling already, and got the NBA with some very important games tonight, and I'm ready to get into it.
All right, let's start off in the NBA, Bobby. What do you have?
Well, you look at the standings, Mike, and we've got about 4 games left or so for all these teams. Things are taking shape, and Golden State won last night, and they're going to be the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Denver's hold on number 2 now is not altogether a lock. They're only a game and a half up on Houston. You got Portland still needing a win or two to hold off Utah for the important 4 spot. And then you've got stuff down at the bottom of that that's kind of crazy, because you got OKC and San Antonio tied for the last, for the 7 and 8 spot. They'll both get in, but one will draw Denver and one will draw Golden State, and there's a huge difference there, especially with the way Denver just has not finished the year strong at all. And then you got the Clippers and Utah, both those teams from the bottom 4 are both upset-minded going into their first round. Just who will their opponents be? I think you want to stay away from Houston, so you don't want to really be in the 6th spot. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in the West. And then you go to the East, there's 2 interesting factors left. You got Boston and Indiana still battling for the 4th spot, who will host that series, because they will play each other in round 1. So 2 important games involving that tonight that we'll get into. And then finally, down there at the bottom, Detroit, Brooklyn, Miami, Orlando. 3 of those 4 will make the playoffs, but what order we still don't know. And with the huge game tonight being the Heat, that is going to be a very big game tonight. Can they win a home game? And they're hosting Boston. Both teams want to win that game. So interesting stuff in the NBA. So let's get down to really all that matters, and that's, where is tonight's stuff. And I've got 2 plays tonight that I like. One is it's a late ad. I didn't have a line on this, and I added it late, so I put it on Twitter, and I informed a lot of people already. And the Pacers and the Pistons are having their rematch tonight. And if you remember, they just played, a few days ago. And Pistons went down to Indiana, and we're getting, 5.5, 6 points. I think we got it at 6, maybe 6.5, and it closed 5.5, getting. And they were in the game the whole way. They never trailed by more than 9. And they were leading for stretches of the game for sure. They had a 6 or 7 point lead right near halftime and looked like they might be very solid bet, and the game didn't finish in our favor. And we knew that Blake Griffin wasn't going to play that day. The key was that I didn't think the Pacers could get any distance from Detroit without their starting backcourt. They're playing again tonight without Matthews and without Collison. They're playing again tonight without those players, and they weren't able to get distance. They just were able to kind of plug along and get the win. We were just really unlucky to not cover. They lost by 7 or 9. Very unlucky to not cover that game, maybe 8. So here's the rematch, and they're coming to Detroit, and Blake Griffin may play tonight. And if he doesn't, I still like Detroit at -3.5 at home. I think they'll return the favor tonight and do it probably much easier than Indiana just did. So I like them. If Blake Griffin plays, that's just an added bonus. And I think we're looking at a 10-point win for Detroit tonight. So I really like them, Mike, as a top play. And then the other game I like is I'm going to pass the Celtics Heat game. The Heat, we've talked about this for 2 months now or longer, that the Heat just cannot win at home, and it's going to be their undoing. They're actually a really solid team. They're one of the best teams in the NBA on the road, top 8 team, maybe top 7 team on the road in the whole league. Yet they may not even make the playoffs, and that's kind of unheard of. And it may cost them again tonight, and can they get a win at home? And so I passed on that. Just the Heat are the play tonight, but can't do it. I tried to back them at home the other day and it didn't work. So I'm going to lay off that game. And the game that I am going to partake in is the Rockets and the Clippers. The Rockets are on a back-to-back, and they took care of the game they really, really had to take care of, which was yesterday. They crushed the Kings on the road, and that was a game that they just couldn't slip in. And this is a game that they'll play. These two teams, if the standings were to end right now, it would be Houston and the Clippers. And so with that saying, I think the Clippers bring it tonight, and they're going to play a big game. I don't see them tonight not playing a huge game. And I think the Clippers can actually, with Utah, can win a series in the first round. And anybody that just doesn't play Golden State in that first round has got a shot. So I like the Clippers tonight. It's 1.5. They're a really good team, and they've been one of the top maybe 6-7 teams in the league now for a while. They're on a really, really good stretch. So I think they can beat the Rockets, and that says a lot because the Rockets are still my pick to win the title. So Clippers tonight and Pistons tonight, small home favorites.
All right, Bobby. What do we got in Major League Baseball?
MLB, Mike. Let me just pop one game in first before we do the MLB. There's a CBI game tonight, and I've passed on all these lower games now for quite a few days in a row. Lower meaning lower playoff, tournaments. And the one game I like tonight, though, is just an interesting matchup because it's a rematch. These two teams just played, and this is the only tournament that you'll find this. And at the end of this CBI, they get the final two teams, and they play a 2 out of 3. And I think that gives us a betting opportunity tonight because this is the second game of 3, and South Florida just inched by DePaul by 2. I'm certain, and so is the betting line. So is Las Vegas certain that DePaul's the better team. South Florida and DePaul were about to pick them, and it closed South Florida a small favorite in that matchup at South Florida. And now they traveled to DePaul, with DePaul being a more substantial favorite of -6. And I think DePaul, by virtue of making this finals and playing this series, that ensures that we know they're in. They want to play. They want to win. And, they went down the other night and played a really solid game and got beat. But this is a game they're going to come home and again, I think they're going to return the favor and force the third game. So to win and not cover would be really unlucky tonight. I think DePaul will control this game right from the outset. So I do think it's worth a bet tonight at -6. And so we get into the MLB, and the MLB, has been, we're 5-3 with our top plays through the first series of days, 4 or 5 days, and I'm okay with that. I've been really a little bit frustrated that with some results. We've had really big shots to sweep cards. We've had big shots to hit our parlay, and we just haven't put the whole card together yet. And it's been a little frustrating, but have to take my own advice. And last night San Francisco loss was really big for my account. I wound up having a few things really hooked to that, and they really were in position to win that game, and they really should have won the game. And remember, we talked about baseball is you have to handicap 2 games. You have to handicap the starting pitching matchup and, versus the offenses. And then there's a second game always in there. No matter what happens in the first game, no matter what happens in the first part of that game, there's always a second game you have to win. And the Dodgers were at a big disadvantage going into the later innings of that game last night. And Bumgarner gives up 4 unearned runs, 5 unearned runs of the Dodger runs, 5 were unearned. They should have won that right there. And then they get to the late part of that game and don't finish a rally that they really had the Dodgers beat on the ropes last night and hit into the double play to end the game. It's just frustrating. So that can be kind of baseball, but you grind it out. And today, I like our plays a lot. We've kind of already got started with the action. And so let me go over what we have still on tap. And that's, we got the Cardinals tonight. They're about even. I got it at +101. I've seen it as high as -05. So it's fluctuating between even and small favorite over the Pirates tonight. I really like the Cardinals. So that's a top play. And we coming back with the Giants tonight to take that series over the Dodgers. That line is just out of whack for where things really stand in that series right now. So we've got the 2 straight plays left on the card tonight. We've got the Cardinals and the Giants. We missed the Royals. That's already off the board. That was a top play. And we missed the 3-team parlay because 2 of those 3 are already off the board. I will mention that the Astros finished that parlay. So if you want to mix and match something, we've got still left the Cardinals, the Giants, and the Astros from our TSR card.
All right, Bobby, is that it?
I think that's it, Mike. I do want to do it on this day, but I know you're probably going to want to take a break first.
Well, we're going to take a commercial break. We're going to come back for On This Day.
Hi, I'm Mike Goodpasser from the Grueling Truth Sports Network, and I'm here with just one simple message. If you're watching the games, it's time to start making money. The Grueling Truth has recently partnered with MyBookie.Ag, an industry-leading sportsbook website, who reminds you that where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on, and that's why the Grueling Truth urges you to check out MyBookie.Ag. In addition to the usual thousands of odds, money lines, proposition bets, and futures offered on MyBookie.Ag daily, they also have in-game live betting and a mobile site that makes wagering on the go easier than ever. So join now and MyBookie will give you up to a free $1,000 cash bonus on your first deposit. Just enter promo code TGT50, that's TGT50, to take advantage of this offer. You can also go to thegruelingtruth.net, click the banner at the top of the page for MyBookie.ag, and also get the same benefit and the same $1,000 free cash bonus on your first deposit. So visit MyBookie.ag, courtesy of the Grueling Truth, and enjoy winning today. MyBookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid.
All right, guys, we are back with Bobby Sheridan on the Grueling Truth Sports Network and the Sheridan Report, brought to you by MyBookie.ag. Bobby, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, all these days here in early April have these championships, and there are more today, but there's one specifically, Mike, that I wanted to talk about, and there's 4 championships that concluded on today, but the one I want to talk about is 1989. This was the 51st NCAA Men's Basketball Championship, and the Big Ten won it this year. Michigan beat Seton Hall 80-79, and I don't remember hardly anything about this.
All right, let's start off with the tournament, because I think what the 89 tournament is most famous for was Georgetown-Princeton. Pete Carroll coached the Princeton Tigers. They ended up losing 50-49. That was the closest until, of course, last year did a 16 seed had ever come to beating a number 1 seed. Georgetown was a very good team that year. Not as good as the teams we talked about yesterday in the mid-'80s. When you look at this, they went on to beat Notre Dame and LaFonso Ellis. They beat North Carolina State. Then they ran into Duke. And this is about the time Duke was starting to kick in, and people would start to not like them shortly after. But Duke blew out South Carolina State, blew out West Virginia, beat Minnesota by double digits. You also had a huge upset there where Siena, who was the 14 seed, beat Stanford, the 3 seed, by a couple points, which led to Minnesota getting to the regional semifinals. Duke handled them. And then Duke, they beat Georgetown by like 6 to 8 points, but there was no doubt that Duke was the better of the 2 teams there. In the West region, the number 1 seed was Arizona, coached by Lute Olson. Arizona easily won their first 2 games, and then they played Jerry Tarkanian and the Runnin' Rebels, who were about a year away from being real damn good. And UNLV ended up making it all the way to the regional finals. Evansville was the big upset in that bracket, as Evansville beat Oregon State, I think like 94-90. Then Evansville lost to Seton Hall. And Seton Hall played Indiana. Seton Hall was the 3 seed. IU was the 2 seed. P.J. Carlissimo's team was led by Andrew Gaze, who was from Australia. He played in the 1988 Olympics for Australia. I think that Australian team finished 3rd or 4th, but they played for a medal, had some really good players. And then Seton Hall plays Arizona, and they manhandled Arizona to get to the Final Four. I think that was the first time Seton Hall had ever made it that far in the tournament. And in the bottom bracket, this is what's interesting because this was another one where the 16 seed East Tennessee State led almost the whole game against Oklahoma. And much like Georgetown, they beat them at the buzzer 72-71. So this was a year where you really had two 16 seeds that almost beat two number one teams. And Oklahoma, as the 1 seed, they came out and they took it out on Louisiana Tech. Like they beat them like 120-80 or something in the next round. But they played Virginia, and Virginia upset them in the regional semifinals. You drop to the bottom. Michigan was a team that had gotten rid of their coach right before the tournament, and they came into the tournament as the 3 seed. They played the Xavier Musketeers, who were the 14th seed, and it was a great game. Michigan wins it by 5. They come out and they play South Alabama in the second round. South Alabama had beaten Alabama 86-84, and I remember at the time all the South Alabama people were excited because they got to play Bama because Bama wouldn't play them in the regular season for some reason. So you could discern from this, maybe it's because South Alabama wasn't worth the risk. Bottom side, the 2 seed North Carolina beat UCLA in the second round. Then Michigan comes out, shoots the lights out, beats North Carolina 92-87. This Michigan team had Ramil Robinson, but more importantly, they had Glenn Rice. And Glenn Rice, one of the greatest shooters, I think, in college basketball history and probably NBA history. We get to the Elite 8, and Michigan they continued on fire, blew out Virginia 102-65. We dropped down to the West, and I think this is the only region where the 1 seed actually made it out live, which Illinois beats McNeese State. And the thing about it, 16 seed against the 1 seed. Illinois only beat McNeese State by 6 points, so you had 3 games with 16 and 1 seeds that were decided by a total of like 8 points. Illinois then beat Ball State. Ball State was very good. They had Chandler Thompson on that team. I don't know if you remember him or not, Paris McCurdy.
No.
And that's the team that actually, a year later in 1990, took UNLV to overtime when UNLV was just running through everybody and damn near beat them. Louisville beats Arkansas. Illinois handled Louisville pretty easily. Then you had Missouri and Syracuse advance to the Sweet 16. This is, Syracuse a couple years after they'd lost, Coleman and those guys. Illinois beat Syracuse, probably the best game in the regional finals, 89-86, which set up a semifinal that was pretty interesting because you had Duke at Seton Hall in one game, and Illinois-Michigan, which is a Big Ten matchup, in the Final Four. And Michigan basically took care of Illinois. Illinois, I think, may have been the better team that year, but Michigan was on such a roll that they were going to be hard for anybody to handle that year. And then in the other game, Duke played Seton Hall, and Duke went on a really cold run at the start of that game, which is what made the huge difference in Seton Hall upsetting Duke. And then that moves us to a Seton Hall-Michigan game, which was played, as we'd talked before, 1984 was the Kingdome. First time they'd played in Seattle since 1952. This game was played in Seattle at the Kingdome also. And this is one of the most underrated championship games in history. Michigan, like I said, they had Ramil Robinson. They had Glenn Rice. Rice scored 31. Robinson scored 21. This team also had Loy Vaught, Terry Mills. I think Sean Higgins came off the bench. Seton Hall in this game was led by John Morden, who played the game of his life, scored 35 points. They had Ramon Rivas, who was Ramon Ramos, which I think he's the guy that got drafted by the NBA, and then he got in a car wreck and never got to play. And the thing that really separated this game was the stud for Seton Hall that year had been Andrew Gaze. And Andrew Gaze in this game was held to 1 for 5 shooting and 5 points. John Morton was the one that kept him in the game with the 35 points. And this game at the end came down to Ramil Robinson shooting free throws, and probably as big a clutch free throws as you're ever going to see. And he drains them. They win the national championship. I think he shot 9 for 10 from the free throw line. As a team, Michigan, I think, was like 14 for 16, which is like 88%. And Seton Hall was 16 for 22, which doesn't look bad at 72%. But then you realize one or two makes there, and they win the national championship. And this was really Carlissimo's last chance to win a championship. And the defense that was played on Andrew Gaze, though, was amazing because Gaze was a guy that could really shoot the ball. I don't know if you remember him or not, Bobby, but
I do remember him slightly.
Yeah, I mean, he could play. I think he averaged like 20 points a game that season. And they just completely put the clamps on him and shut him down, which led to Michigan winning it all. And the thing about Gaze is he was brought over there just for that 1 year. He played 1 year, and then he was gone. And I think he went back to playing professional basketball in Australia. I don't know if he played in the NBA or not, but I don't think he did. So that was the guy that was a one-and-doner, but he was a one-and-doner that was probably worth it. Yeah, he was a hell of a three-point shooter, damn good free throw shooter. But in the end, Glenn Rice and Rumeal Robinson were the difference here. And they made Steve Fisher a genius, and Steve Fisher got to keep the job because Bill Frieder had been fired right before that tournament. And they struggled to get past Xavier. Once they got past Xavier, though, they were on a roll the likes of most have never seen. I mean, you remember the old arcade game NBA Jam where you'd like hit 3 shots in a row and then the player would be on fire and the ball would be on fire and no matter what you threw would go in? That was Glenn Rice in that tournament.
Wow. Well, he did that a few times for the Lakers too. I mean, he was with the Lakers, later in his career, and he did that. And I think he was with Charlotte Hornets for a lot of his.
Wasn't he with the Heat also?
Miami Heat also, yeah. He bounced around a little bit, but he was a tall, lanky shooter that could fill it up.
Yeah, and, I think he's one of the greatest shooters in NCAA history.
Yeah, been nice. And then there's a couple side notes now to '89. As we move forward now, the Fisher coaches the Fab Five because they come in like in '91, right?
92.
And so
92.
Or 92, yeah. So then right on the heels of this, boom, the Fab Five come in. And then another note, and, this was brought up on Twitter the other day, but I knew this already, that, Indiana Hoosiers were the regular season champs that year of the Big Ten. Is that correct, Mike?
I think they were. If they weren't, Illinois was. But those 3 teams were real good. And, I mean, most people thought the Indiana team was better than the 2 teams that got there.
Right, and the Indiana team beat Michigan twice that year. And if Michigan State goes on to win the tournament this year, they will have beaten Michigan State twice, beaten the champion twice. And that happened in '89, and it would happen in 2019, 30 years later. And so that's interesting. And that's a year that Bob Knight, by many accounts, was his greatest coaching achievement because this was a team not expected to win the Big Ten and came out and just were tremendous. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay Edwards was
Jay Edwards, Lyndon Jones, both of those guys had played at the same high school in Marion, Ohio, and actually they won back-to-back state championships at Marion. Marion had a coach by the name of Bill Green, who is considered one of the legendary coaches in Indiana high school basketball history. Green, I think, was actually one of the coaches for the NBA or for the Indiana-Kentucky All-Star game, the Indiana All-Star team in 1977 that Steve Risley played on.
Oh, okay. So that's Bill Green. Okay. Wow. I think I had heard that name, not in any official capacity, but maybe just from a YouTube video or something that I may have watched around this.
Yeah, and the thing about Glenn Rice that I didn't realize was, he was, of course, an NBA champion with the Lakers in 2000. He was a 3-time NBA All-Star. He was the NBA All-Star Game MVP. He was an all-rookie selection. He was the 3-point shootout champion in 1995. And then, of course, he was the most outstanding player, the 1989 Final Four. He was the Big Ten Player of the Year in 1989. And for his career, he scored 18,336 points, which comes out to a little over 18 points per game. So he was a hell of a basketball player.
Wow. And, Mike, I'm going to hit you with this one, and I know that you'll know it. Hillman for the Hoosiers, who played such a key role off the bench in the championship. Was he a senior leader on this team?
On 89's team?
Yes.
I believe he was. I think he was, because he was one of my favorite players. And the thing about Joe Hillman was, from what I hear, he was a better baseball player than he was basketball player.
Oh, my gosh, I didn't know that.
Because I think he played on the IU basketball team, and when the season's over, he went and he moved and he played baseball. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Joe Hillman was a senior on this team, because the 89 team would have been Edwards, Jones, Todd Jadlow, who we've had on the show before. I think he had Magnus Pelkowski, Jamal Meeks, Matt Nover, Eric Anderson, Cray Smith, Brian Sloan. You remember Sloan Screen 45 with Dickie V, Joe Hillman. And, Indiana finished the Big Ten season. Actually, Illinois was ranked third at the end of the year. Indiana was ranked eighth, but IU had won the Big Ten with a 15-3 record. They were 27-8 overall. How's this for a loaded Big Ten? That year, Indiana wins the Big Ten championship. They're 27-8. Illinois in second is 31-5. Michigan is in third at 30-7.
Unbelievable. That's vintage Big Ten. That's vintage.
And you know why this is one of Knight's greatest achievements? Because I remember that year. They started the year off with a couple wins against nondescript teams, and they went to Maui and played the Maui Invitational, and they played Syracuse. Everybody hyped it up as a rematch of that national championship game, and they just got their doors blown off. They got beat like 105-70 or something. And then in the consolation round, or no, was it Maui or New York? I can't remember. It might have been the preseason NIT. I think it was, because they made it to the Final Four to preseason NIT, because they beat like Illinois State and Stanford or something, and then in the consolation round they got their doors blown off by Carolina 106-92, and then it's like a week later Louisville just pounds them at the Hoosier Dome by like 20. Notre Dame beats them at Notre Dame by like 15, and I think that they started that season off like 2-4 or 3-4.
Wow, that is this what a turnaround he did for that team, and if you look at the roster compared to Illinois and Michigan, it's not even close.
And the thing about Illinois is this: IU lost 3 games in the Big Ten. They lost both of the games to Illinois.
And Kendall Gill, was that Kendall Gill?
Yeah, that was Kendall Gill. That was a great Illini basketball team too. It's like I said, I think it's possible that the 1988-89 Illinois team may have been the best team in the country. The only problem was Lou Henson coached them, and he was not the greatest coach in the world, I don't think. And I know Knight wasn't a big fan of him either.
Yeah, and I got one more question for you. The half-court shot that Nick Anderson hit to beat IU, was that this year or was that
I think it was. I think it was like the second or third to last game of the season. It was at Assembly. You're talking about the one at Assembly Hall, right?
At Assembly Hall, yeah, with the game.
Yeah, and it was. I think it was on ABC TV also.
Yes.
And the game was tied, and he pulls up from like 40 feet. And did he bank it in, or did he? I think he banked it in, didn't he?
I think he switched it in, but I could be wrong. I remember seeing it a few times, and
I just remember he hit it, and I was broken.
Yeah, that's crazy. Hey, Mike, that's a great memories from '89, and what a job that Carnesecca did getting Seton Hall there, because I don't think that roster was anything close to Michigan's roster in terms of talent. Going forward, I think all 5 of those guys you named for Michigan.
Oh, you mean Carlissimo?
Carlissimo, yes. Sorry if I said that wrong. Yeah, Carlissimo. What a job he did, because look at NBA. Look at the Michigan 5 that they rolled out. Those are all NBA players.
Yeah, they were all damn good. And Illinois was loaded with NBA guys. And
I don't remember Johnny Morton, except for the receiver for the Lions. I don't remember Johnny Morton.
Yeah, and I don't think that's the same Johnny Morton.
Oh, my, good stuff. And, hey, that's what I love doing on this day with you, and I appreciate that. And hopefully we can get a few winners out of today. And, it's been a little bit of a slow stretch. But even in the slow stretch, Mike, the top play in the MLB is 5-3, and sometimes you just have to play. And this goes for myself too. I was just speaking to my son about this. Sometimes you have to play. When things aren't totally in sync, you just got to play the top plays. And
told me that ahead of time, Bobby.
Well, I've been playing for the sweeps too, because I think they're coming, but it's grinding out money, Mike, and we just got to stay with it day to day and then get the hot streak going. But even in this little few days stretch here, we've still won 5 of 8 top plays in the MLB, and we still feel pretty good about that. So anyhow, on to tonight, Mike.
All right, Bobby. Sounds good. Guys, we'll be back tomorrow with Survive in Advance and in the Sheridan Report, and then Inside Boxing Daily. Inside Boxing Daily will be on tonight at 11 o'clock Eastern Time also, so make sure you check out me and Jeremiah there. Make sure you go to thesheridanreport.com, buy the Sheridan Report for $10 a day, or better yet, buy the whole month for $50. Go to MyBookie.Ag, click on the banner at the top of thegruelingtruth.net, get up to a $1,000 cash bonus on 50% of what your first deposit is. I want to thank everybody for listening, and remember, you can hear us anywhere on the internet, including Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Bobby Sheridan, I'm Mike Goodpastor. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.